Hi and welcome to the Fellowship of the Ring Pool, our weekly gathering of like-minded creative individuals having a blether, putting the world to rights, bit of a moan here and there, and giving ourselves some tips and tricks. It's a bumper episode today because I've got a very special guest. We're also announcing the winner of the Tina Guo. Ooh, look, I can hear myself coming out of the speakers. Oh, is it because... This is going to be the first and last technical thing that happens to us. So, do we need to be worried about that? That's my computer. Brilliant. Okay. It's always alarming when you hear yourself. It reminds me of a conversation I once had with someone I was trying to break up with. And at the end of the conversation, she put her handbag on her shoulder and I heard my voice coming out of it and she taped the whole thing. There you go. That's an interesting reminder. So bumper podcast today because we're announcing the winner of the Tina Guo Storm Cello competition. But we've also got a really exciting, very interesting challenge to announce this week, which will result in none other than an actual commission. And I'm hoping that a few of you who have never had a commission before have a go at this challenge because it's a really fun one. So what we'll probably do is we'll go through, we've got a bunch of runners-up. We've got 2 honourable mentions for 2 that we really like. There were hundreds of entries, so thank you for that. You've made our jobs difficult, but in a good way. So what we'll do is we'll go in reverse order until we get to the prize-winning runners-up, ending with the winner. But also do stick around to find out about this next challenge because it's a really, really good one. And it's something that is really going to leave a mark should you win it. Just a couple of things. I put out a video yesterday about, or day before yesterday, about these controllers. And, you know, I just want to reiterate, I'm not a tech reviewer. As a lot of people have pointed out, I've got a few things wrong. But the most important thing is I implied that this Lugin controller couldn't store presets. Of course it can. And when they sent it, it did come with a link to a user manual. It was just something I kind of lost before doing the review. So I really apologise to the guys about this. I will correct that on a future YouTube, and you'll be sure to see it on some tutorials coming up too. I hope that ameliorates against my mistake. But yes, you can store presets, and contrary to a lot of people saying there's no way that this will be able to tell you where your previous fader movements were, I can confirm that you are in fact wrong, that you can, and it's a very clever device in that respect, the only device that offers that functionality. So well done again to Lugin, and sorry that I just didn't pay attention. Again, I'm not a tech reviewer, so I'm not as well versed. I just also wanted to share some sad news that although he had a good innings, particularly for musicians of that era, Roy Ayers passed away today. It was a massively influential figure on me. I was really into rare groove when I was a kid, and I had the extraordinary pleasure of working with him for a day, re-recording Everybody Loves the Sunshine, it was a pinch me moment. I had this shitty little ADAT studio in Ladbroke Grove, and for some reason he was on tour. He was playing at Ronnie's for a couple of weeks. He had a little, 2-week residency, and he just wanted to get this thing finished. So he came in to do the vocals on Everybody Loves the Sunshine. I had an extraordinary day with him. He had a few sexual anecdotes that were definitely of their time, and I don't think would do him any favours to share here, but I was certainly left with a feeling of tremendous warmth. There was also this point that at this pecky little studio that I had, we didn't have any sweetener. So he wandered across the road to Sainsbury's to get some Canderel. And I just had this thought of this absolute fucking living jazz funk legend. No one has a clue who that is, walking through the aisles of Sainsbury's, North Kensington, Ladbroke Grove. Extraordinary. So rest in peace, sir. I think what we'll do before I introduce my special guest is we'll go and play our first. We'll play all of the 5 kind of people that we really want to highlight this week. The 2 honourable mentions, 2 runners-up, and the winner. We'll play all of them because it's only a minute, and they're all quite diverse and interesting. So this first one is from Zoe Martinez Salas, and I apologise to all of you in advance for the mispronunciations. I believe he is based in Colombia. And what's been really lovely about the offerings for this particular challenge is a real a wide geographical spread. There's a little clue there. So take it away, Alan, for Zoe's go at the Storm Cello trailer. So thanks so much to Zoe for that entry. Really enjoyed that descending synth thing. I'd love to know what synth you used for that. I'm hearing those kind of sounds a lot these days. Is that a granular synth you're using, or maybe someone who's watching online could suggest, is that a Serum or something like that? I'm so not up to date with not competitors, but other manufacturers' plugins. It's my very, very great pleasure to welcome Ben. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well.
Excellent. Now, Ben is a fantastic composer, but also is someone who has, very much like me, diversified your operations into applications of music and sound that is possibly adjacent to the core ambitions a lot of people have. And that's not me trying to be polite. I think it's the thing that we've all got to do is be open-minded and discover areas where we have strengths and interests and all that kind of stuff. So you've been working not only as a composer, but in the field of podcasting, helping people get podcasts on, helping people with the technical concerns there. But also, you've been specialising in audio branding, which is something I'd love for you to explain to me, as well as the people who have joined us here today. So what was your route? Your accent suggests you're from south of there.
I've moved around a bit, yeah.
Yeah. So what was your way in?
Well, I was a singer-songwriter.
Right.
That's how I started out, and that was my kind of ambition. And like many people, that didn't quite work out, and my day job became my career.
Yeah.
And I got to 40 years old, and I looked around, and I realised I used to be the youngest person in the team, and I realised I was the oldest person there.
That happens quite quickly, doesn't it? It's like a flip.
Yes, it's a flip thing. Yeah, a lot of people left, and I just thought, if I don't leave now, I'm probably never will. And so I jumped ship, and it wasn't the way you're taught you should do it. You know, where you kind of get your side hustle going and figure out. No, it was more like, I have to go now. And
right.
So I did. And then I jumped off a cliff and I built the parachute on the way down. So It was one of those, what am I good at? What can I do? What can I get paid for? What do people need? And the first thing that came was podcasts, because as a composer, I had all the equipment. I could figure most of it out.
Can I interrupt? Just what kind of year was this? Because obviously the podcast is a timeline that is exploding, but it was a few years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 2018 when I made that jump, and I'd already done a couple of things for people, but it wasn't really in my mind as a career. And then what happened was I started doing more and more music for people, just in terms of playlisting and finding things that were going to fit their brand, and because I have a background in branding, had some awareness of that. And it was one particular client who she was a very specific sort of person, and I could not find it. And I'd spent so long looking through every library, listening to motivational corporate piano tunes and looking for the gems, you know. And I thought it wasn't a complicated thing she needed. I could have done it by now. So I did.
Great.
And unbeknownst to me, she was going off to a branding weekend with all these kind of entrepreneurs and people who needed to build a personal brand. Mm-hmm. And she just played it to everyone and went, look what this guy did for me. And I did go over the top because I was enjoying myself.
Yeah.
And that's how it started, really. So it started with podcasts, but I quickly started to realize, well, it goes beyond that, because most of the people I work with, which is US-based entrepreneurs and business owners, they're kind of trying to tie all these things together. They're on Instagram, they're doing speeches, they're doing all sorts of things. And an audio brand is a great way to kind of pull it all together. Mm-hmm. So you have a theme, you have a motif, whatever it might be, but it might sound very different on the waiting room on the webinar than it does at the keynote speech, you know, when you want a kind of club banger or something. So that's how I got started.
And I think that what you've demonstrated is a fantastic way of. I've always said I question the rationale behind trying to hold down a demanding day job whilst developing maybe that side hustle, whilst like planning to become a full-time composer, because you get tied into it. You build up. It always happens. It's only natural. You build up an overhead burden, whether it be paying off a lease on a car or renting or whatever. Whereas actually there are many, many, many jobs that are adjacent to the actual craft of composing, but that will get you into those creative spheres where opportunities can happen where they absolutely wouldn't happen in your day job working in a bank or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think I've had two professional lives, and one of them was, well, this thing over here pays for this thing over here, and that didn't work very well. So you've got to find that overlap. Yeah.
And who would have known that would have been your routine? The other thing that I really love about your story is the argument, and I'm sure it's an argument you make frequently, for commissioned music, that it's not as scary as you think. It's probably not as expensive as you think. And it's a little bit like, I need to find a shelving unit. And it's like, well, why don't you get a joiner in to actually put some shelves that fit into the cubby, as opposed to going to lots of different shops and measuring up, really,
Yeah, and I think the other thing that part of the job that I've realized part of my job now is kind of education. And so I'm starting to come out from behind the desk more and talk about this stuff, because I think that was the challenge for me, was people would spend a lot of money on their website design and their logo and their fonts and fuss all over that. And then they'd ask for some music, and they'd probably ask someone who's been there for a week, can you go and find some music?
Yeah.
And they'd pick something they liked. And it was just, there's a mismatch,
Yeah.
And you can, as you can tell a story. You can explain who you are. You can do so much in 10 seconds of music. Far more than you can do by just explaining it.
Yes, absolutely.
And with all of these people I work with, the key thing is they're trying to form an emotional connection with their listener. And music is emotion, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
And where library music is concerned, and this is no offence to library music composers, because I am one, but you were mentioning, looking out for the gems there. Once you've got quite a tight brief, it makes the search that much more difficult. But also, I don't know if you'd agree that when you do find the gems, they're pretty obvious. And as a consequence, quite often, other people have found those gems.
Right.
They stick out. They have that rare thing that touches the chord, which is why when you look at TikTok, or whatever has been migrated from TikTok onto your Instagram feed, you'll hear maybe 5-6 pieces of music over and over again. And, I know that memes are slightly different, but the danger always is, and I always quote that my mother was in a series called Give Us a Clue, which just happened to have exactly the same theme tune as Grange Hill, because it was the same piece of library music.
Bam, bam. Really?
Yeah, the first series of Give Us a Clue had the Grange Hill, because it was from like the Bruton catalogue. And again, these things, they stick out. And in this day and age where we're still making library music in albums, what tends to happen is the album's now like 6 tracks long, because people know you never go past the second or third song on an album.
Yep.
So what happens is all of these kind of signature tracks that fit to the brief that fits the title of the album, more than not, people will listen, that's a very well described album, or that nails it. And so it's not like you've got, a 1 in 6 chance of that being heard on another podcast that's a similar thing. It's a much higher set of odds. I don't know if that's something that you say to clients. There's always the risk.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly do. And really, what the main pitch is that if you're trying to build a personal brand, which a lot of these clients are trying to build a personal brand around the business,
Yeah.
You don't want to be using something and then walking through the supermarket and you hear it, on some advert, and you have no control over what it's on.
Yeah.
So immediately you ceded control. It's a little bit of the sort of Bruce Springsteen, Ronald Reagan moment kind of thing.
Yeah.
You don't know where it's going to be used. So to have control of that, and also to have something that actually represents who you are or the side of you that you're presenting.
Yeah.
That's mostly. I mean, when it comes to podcasts, for example, a lot of people just look for a piece of music that they like. And what I'm normally looking for is, on a much more kind of personal level, who is it that you're talking to on your show? Do you understand who they are? How old are they? Where do they live? What do they do? What are they afraid of? What do they want? And most importantly, for the sector I work in, how will they feel when they achieve the thing you're trying to help them achieve? What does that sound like?
Yes.
What's that emotion? And that's what people tend to miss. And that's what you're trying to dial in.
Yeah.
And that's quite hard to do at the best of times. But a lot of the time, there are some better libraries out there and there's some amazing music out there.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, when you get that specific, it's very, very hard to find something.
Yeah.
It gets harder and harder, in fact. And then that's when it makes sense to actually make it.
Yeah. A piece of music I wrote that this is my proudest moment as a library music composer, and apologies to those who have heard this story before, but yeah, my one of my proudest moments as a library music composer was watching an episode of The Osbournes, and they'd selected a very light, bouncy piece of almost cocktail jazzy music that I'd written for a library, to underscore their cat being raped by their Yorkshire Terrier dog.
And was that music your music?
And that music was my music.
Oh,
and
beautiful.
It was just nice to know that the Prince of Darkness has probably heard one of my tracks whilst watching his cat being violated by his Yorkshire Terrier.
So they didn't go with the...
No, they didn't do that. It was much lighter. But, you can imagine, you put that on a podcast about, I don't know, an emotional awareness podcast, and suddenly someone goes, why have you used the cat rape music? Yeah. So there's always that danger. But it was, talking to Hans Zimmer once, name drop, he's very sensitive about percussion sample libraries and doesn't like, one, sharing his samples, and two, using commercial libraries. He said there's something so incredibly recognizable. I guess because percussion libraries, it's all about that first transient. So they're instantly recognizable. And he goes, he calls it the multiplex factor. He goes, I don't want someone coming in, seeing a score that has my kind of brand name on it, and then they go next door and see Spy Kids 9, and it's got exactly the same sample set on it. There's something slightly cheap about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think it would be well worth people just keeping a real eye on, ear out for what Ben's been talking about today, because there is a context that will become clear when we announce the next composing challenge. So there's some great tips here to think about when we assign that challenge. But first of all, it would be lovely, before we invite people into the chat room, be lovely to hear the next honourable mention for the Tina Guo Storm Cello competition. And that is a couple of gents called Sean Haberman and Justin Fields, who make up an act called Tron Williams. And this was their entry for the Storm Cello Challenge. We had a dramatic moment there, Ben, didn't we? There was a hit.
It was bang on.
Yeah, it was bang on, and then suddenly all of these faces appeared on this really rather large screen that we've got down, and it was like boom. It's like the conclave has arrived. Actually, I shouldn't have mentioned that because the Pope's ill at the moment. So, welcome everyone on the Google Meet. I look, as I say weekly, I really look forward to us meeting. I love the way that Pavel every week at this time is walking home from work, and we get to see Pavel do the same walk. Pavel, you must live fairly far north, or is it dark outside now? No, it's dark outside now, so no more north than us. I'm joined today by Ben. Ben, I've known you so long now, but I forgot your surname.
Yeah, I got a text saying, "Are you doing this podcast? And what's your surname?"
Yes. So your surname is
Williams.
Ben Williams, and do you have a company URL that we could share?
Yeah, people, if they want to check out what I do, they can go to www. Nobody says that, do they? brandoutlouddesign.com. brandoutloud.com. brandoutlouddesign.com, or bold for short.
God, I'm an absolutely useless podcaster. I'm totally, because Ben has worked so much in podcasts, I feel incredibly judged here today.
And you should.
I'm going to get marks at the end of this. There is a context to why I've been wanting to invite Ben here for a while. But there is a context to it, and I think that we've got a composing challenge that I hope you all agree is a very interesting one, and one in which I think Ben is perfectly positioned to offer advice on, and has already given us some. It's hard to hear Ben in the Google Meet. Maybe you could step up more to the mic.
Is that
Thanks
better?
For that, Nick.
I apologise.
Can you hear this, Ben? Nick?
What a rank amateur.
Yeah, there we go. It's because Ben doesn't speak loudly like the show-off that is myself, especially when I'm nervous because I'm being judged and I'm going to get marks at the end of the day. But yeah, Ben, I think it would be great to ask Ben some questions about this really interesting field of audio branding. And if you were to summarise what that is, how would you, one, describe it, and two, why you think it matters?
The way I would describe it actually is probably in non-musical terms these days. So, I mean, the strapline for my business is we help brands and leaders create sound that connects with their listener, so they hear them and remember them. Remember them being the key thing. And the only way you remember something is if you have an emotional response to it.
Yeah.
Or it's certainly the best way. And so creating music that creates an emotion that is in line with what that person's kind of trying to get across or trying to help someone do, that's basically it. So a lot of it is about the work before you start writing any notes. It's about figuring out who that company or personality is as a person and how you can get that across in a way that sort of, it's like a Venn diagram. You have their personality here, you have the listeners here, and somewhere in the middle, there's a kind of emotional thing that connects them.
Yeah.
Whatever that might be.
And what is so interesting about this idea of branding is that people tend to concentrate on the visual. Mm-hmm. Yet, with this huge explosion of podcasts, and that being a way in which people get their news, helps to form their opinions. It's the way that they learn. It's the way that they read books these days. Radio and what it is morphed into is the medium that just won't die.
Yeah, and the internet is increasingly screenless. So, people are walking around when they're jogging or they're moving around or doing the washing up or driving to work or on the train. They're not looking at your brand. No. So the question I always ask businesses is, can they hear you?
Yeah.
And if they can't, then, it's like you can use it. I always say, if you're using an obviously stock piece of music that doesn't really do anything, there's no intentionality behind what you chose. Yeah. It's the equivalent of building an incredible showroom for your business, and then, like in Comic Sans, putting your business name there in like 8 Arial or something. It's just like, it's a wasted opportunity.
On that note, just any of you who's doing kind of some visual branding, Bleeding Cowboys, that font, no. Absolutely not. So, guys, if you keep your mics muted, but if anyone has a question or wants to contribute or wants to ask a question or wants to make a point, offer some advice, we've got someone speaking from a space station there. Anthony, looks good. Then just if you just hit the thing that has a little hand like that, then we'll see that you want to contribute to the conversation. I have a question for you. What is a mnemonic?
Mnemonic. That's a good question. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just think of it as a short, memorable. I mean, it's essentially when I'm creating an audio brand, I use fancy marketing terms. So I'll say it's the audio DNA of the company. Mm-hmm. Has everything in it. It's the whole menu in one piece mm-hmm. of music that might never actually be played publicly, but everything's in there, Mm-hmm. And there'll always be something in there, a little mnemonic. They're just kind of a little nugget. I did something for a wine company in Canada, and they were trying to appeal to a younger audience and rebrand and all that sort of thing. And the first effort was a disaster, but the second one, we nailed it. Yeah. Not disaster, but and that was the first 3 notes of Clair de Lune on wine glasses, but kind of overlapping. Mm-hmm. Didn't sound like Clair de Lune, but it sounded very nice. With a couple of other things, the sounds of the brush and birds of the winery. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly hot where they are in Canada. And it just formed this little nugget, and a little laugh at the end and a clink. Yeah. The question was, they wanted to kind of be friendship and camaraderie and good times, basically. Mm-hmm. And what does that sound like? And I tried everything, and then I just thought, oh, it's just 2 glasses clinking, isn't it? Yeah. So I started with that. But yeah, that's a long and rambling answer. No, but it's just something that sticks. It doesn't have to be melodic necessarily.
It's also something that we're surrounded by but don't realise.
Everywhere.
So, I think we all know when we've switched on Netflix. That's I believe that's Hans Zimmer.
Is it?
Yeah,
I didn't know
did
that.
And, a lot of these are really, really clever. They can be single notes. They can be, there's the McDonald's one. I remember doing something for Kodak, and they have one.
I mean, I was going to say, I think of it as a prompt, basically.
Right.
So
it's almost like a leitmotif, isn't it?
It's a leitmotif, but it's almost like a prompt or a call to action. Like Netflix, I literally think that's ta-da.
Yeah.
Because everyone's like doing this. So yeah, the show has to start with to pull you in,
And it is like a physical branding. It's like you kind of and that's what's very interesting about whilst Apple TV has its own mnemonic, it doesn't put it on the front of its programs.
No.
So you have to be watching them, and you get that wonderful Helvetica font. But I don't know if I connect as much with, or feel I have a relationship as much with the Apple productions as I do.
I'm sure they've thought. There must be some thinking behind it, but I don't know what that thinking is. I mean, everybody else seems to do it. So
yeah,
Netflix is douche.
Yeah.
Disney is like gather round with the blankets. It's much more. It's a little bit more. Come on in and sit down, and we're going to travel away. So, yeah. But I mean, phones excel at it. Phone companies and stuff, don't they?
Even Pixar.
Yeah.
Squelch. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's brilliant, isn't it? It's. I remember being asked by an ad exec the mnemonic of the Kodak thing I was working on. They said, what did you play that on? I said, it's like a Moog, it's like a vintage synth. And they said, can you use a drum kit to play it? I was like, it can play the rhythm of the mnemonic. And he went, no rhythm, just music. And it's like, this is going to be a tough one. But as you say, it can be. It's about individualism and something that maybe you haven't heard before. I mean, the great one is THX 1138, which is a massive poly glissando. So if we've got any questions for Ben today, please do raise your hands, because I do think it's a fascinating subject, and one that it's lovely to hear in this day and age that the stuff that is custom built, that is bespoke or tailor-made, which is a more familiar phrase in the United States, there is still very much a calling for that. And in fact, that if you are employing people who are good at it, it's remarkable, if you brief them well, how quickly you can get there.
Yeah. And I think there's actually, with the internet going screenless, with so much more media out there than there used to be, with so much noise, with so many people trying to get their voice out there, there is a market for it.
Yeah.
It's just, it's like everything. You've got to figure out everything around the thing you want to do.
Yeah.
So it's finding a way to kind of actually keep making the music and figure out all the other stuff.
I'm a great proponent of YouTube as a platform. I'm also, I'm really aware of some composers who have really had those rare, wonderful, fortunate opportunities happen because they've got themselves out there. So we heard from Steve Mazzaro, was it last week or the week before? Last week, who Hans just heard his music on a catalogue. I also know that Ben Valfish, Hans discovered, I had worked with Hans with Ben by this point, but Hans just saw him working on YouTube and picked him up. And I know that some people who have appeared on my channel have been picked up by composers to assist and to co-write and that kind of stuff. I think it's really important to get yourself out there. And all I ever say is it's just a means of people getting to know you. And if you can be honest to who you are, it does stand you at an advantage compared to your competitors. Because I have a massive stationery fetish, my Instagram feed is Dachshunds and stationery. And it's just very interesting. There is you've got your Mont Blancs and this, that, and the other, but there's the brand I click on the most is a brand that's been developed by a bloke. I don't know if this bloke is a real bloke and if he actually developed it and this, that, and the other. And I've seen over the last year or so, a lot of these stationery brands try and connect the human element with it, of like this familiar voice, this personality. And just do you, before we come to Charles, do you Does that resonate with you? This idea of it's not just about algorithms; it's about that human connection.
100%. That is everything. Funnily enough, I realized, so I started off this business because I wanted to find a way of making music, making a living, and something that people will actually use and appreciate and all the rest of it. But what I found was the music, I love making music, don't get me wrong, I could do it all day. But the thing that really jumped out at me once I got good at what I do is that's not the best bit. The best bit, and I would never get to do this in any other way, writing for film or anything, I don't think. The best bit is playing someone a piece of music that you've written specifically for and about them and their listeners, and you get to see their reaction. Sometimes that's not so good, but usually it's pretty good. And you get to see themselves as you see them.
Yeah.
It's a bit meta, but you see.
No. It's fascinating.
You see them kind of, the shoulders go back a bit, and it's all very honest. I'm not like blowing smoke up anyone's ass. It is literally like, you're this type of person, and that's the most gratifying bit, because that's the connection. I actually get to enjoy that connection with that person.
We're going to welcome into the conversation a person who is their own living audio brand, just by the way that they speak. Mr. Charles Carlenberg. Is that? Have I pronounced your surname? I've never said your surname before, Charles. Mic problems.
Oh, what a disappointment.
I've built it up.
You built it up so much, and now I can't hear him.
Still can't hear you. Your mic is definitely off. We don't have the mic icon on. I don't know if you've noticed this about Zoom calls. It's always the musicians who can't work. But it's because it's always the patch bay is not quite right, and stuff. We'll let you know when we can hear you, Charles. No luck yet. I'll let you know when we can hear you. Your mic feed was definitely switched on, but there was nothing coming through.
Do we need a special signal or something we can give him?
Yeah, thumbs up. So your mic is now definitely muted, I can see on the screen. And presumably it's the same computer as we're hearing stuff from. So we're definitely, that's... And what we'd see is a little icon kind of saying there was sound coming out, Charles. No, definitely, I built you up. Maybe you can come in later to talk to Ben. Jay, how are you? Speaking from the south of America. Central America. Sorry.
Monkeys. Yeah, I'm actually. Well, if you want to get it there, it's technically north because we're like south of Mexico. Good. I'm good. I'm working on some band stuff right now while I'm sitting here. But I had a question for Ben actually. Talking about tailor-made music and stuff like that. I have worked with some clients with promotional video. I usually do the sound design. I don't make music for them. I do sound design for them. But how do you position tailor-made music as something that they need? Because with all the library music that exists out there, that's very accessible, very quick. And these are people that usually have, deadlines of, they call me today and it's like, I need it on Friday. Friday's tomorrow, dude. How can we kind of like sell this to our clients? Be like, look, you need better music. Your promotional video is great. You need bespoke music for this because why? Because it's going to take time. It's going to take longer time for them to deliver the project.
Yeah.
But it's going to look better. It's going to be, to the edit, but sometimes they edit to the music. So how do you compete with that kind of thing?
It's a really, really good question. And it was the one I had to start with because I had the same issue. The answer is you have to start way further back and you have to talk to different people, basically. So this isn't something you do for an individual production. This is something you do for a company. Mm-hmm. So it needs to be, if it's a smaller company, the company owner or the marketing CEO or the marketing team. That's the sort of level you need to come in at before they've made the video. And you have to sell them on the idea of having, for example, I mean, the easiest thing is you're selling them on the idea of having an audio logo, for example. So, I mean, and the way I do it is I'm saying, look, you've got this video, you've got this, and sometimes I'll just line them up and go, listen to this video, switch the video off, listen to what's on it. Where's the through line? There's no through line. How do people know it's you? You know, every video you put out, every piece of content, a lot of your content should have your 2-second, 3-second audio sting, your mnemonic, on the front or the back, so that people know it's you. But that's the answer really, is at that stage, you're writing music for the video. And what I realized I wanted to do was have people make videos for the music.
Yeah. There was a very interesting conversation I had with a director once. I was working on a very big TV series. It was 13 eps, was the first series and last. And it was for Sinbad. And he was very much into the audio branding. And he goes, I want the Star Trek moment at the beginning of the theme tune. And what he meant by that is when people are going for a pee or making a cup of tea is that you hear it come on, which is, that's very much a kind of an old media kind of approach to it. But if you think of Star Trek, dun, 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 that's, you know, the mnemonic, you know, the chord that begins Star Wars. You know, that has become now this amazing shuddering moment that people connect to. It's the logo, but it's that chord to a point that when people hear it, I believe that I should know this obviously, but it's not obvious to me. But is it a B major chord, Alan?
B flat.
B flat major chord. But it's the orchestration, and you see, if I were to play with a B flat major chord, you wouldn't go Star Wars, but that I think ties into this idea of the audio element of which music is a part, but the audio element is actually that arrangement, that inversion of the chords, because it is just one chord.
Yeah.
But it is a sound that is unique, and you know, and again, I think that the other thing, Jay, I would say is people who are in C-suites or marketing heads, people who are doing their jobs, they have egos like the rest of us. And if you say to them, what you need is an audio package, that just sounds like something that's going to cost them money and they don't really feel they need. If you say what you need is an audio logo, that is stimulating. That's a bit like, oh, yes, no, I am good enough to have an audio logo. Just like, you know, I've seen composers create logos for their websites. But yeah. I remember I got a logo commissioned for one of my early websites. And the graphic designer just nicked the Samsung logo. And it was just like, yeah, I don't know if that's really me, not being from South Korea and not making televisions. But it was literally, he'd flipped the sphere on the other side. It was the same colorway and everything. And I guess that's a good example of, well, you wouldn't just get the Samsung logo and put your own name on it. You need right. It to be yours. You need it to be original. But the importance there, and I think that, Jay, you know, it's something you talking about sound design. It is this where this world and where the Venn diagram of music and sound really crosses, and where sound plays an equal part. Again, I don't know what the note is in Netflix, but if I were to play that on the piano, you know, my kids aren't going to go, hey, Netflix. It needs to be that collection of instruments.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is you can do it the other way around too, which is a way to pitch it. So, I mean, I did this with some school kids, some primary school kids, and I got logos printed out for various companies, and but companies they'd know, you know, as kids, and I'd hold them up, and I'd go, "What's this? What's this? What's this?" And I was like, "I hope this works." And I just hold up the McDonald's one, and the whole class went ba da ba ba ba, and I went, "That's what an audio brand is."
Yeah,
you don't even need to see or hear the logo; it's up there.
Yeah.
And the other way around, I've done it is when I was out in the States last year, and this worked really well. I just stumbled across it really, but I said I'm gonna They said, "What's audio branding?" And I said, "I'm going to put a logo, an image in your head, and you can't stop me. There's nothing you can do to stop me. And I'm going to describe it to you, and you're going to get it exactly right. The colors, the font, everything. And I'm going to do it in 2 seconds. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba."
Yeah.
And everybody went, "Oh, that's what it is. That's what audio branding is."
And what's very interesting about McDonald's, it is McDonald's, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that would
Bless
have been
you for
bad.
not. I love the fact that you had to check though. That's
Yeah,
great.
that would have been really embarrassing. Mate, it's Wendy's.
It's Albuquerque boiled turkey.
But what's interesting is in this country, they also have a very distinct voice for the voice of McDonald's. So that is the human connection.
The human
Do you know
element,
who
yeah.
that is, that voice?
No.
It's Dexter Fletcher.
Oh, Dexter.
Can you imagine, like Dexter Fletcher has become, he's gone from Bugsy Malone all the way through Press Gang, which won't be familiar to anyone outside the UK, to Lock Stock, to becoming this like world-class director of Oscar-nominated films, and he's still doing McDonald's ads. Can you imagine how much money they're paying him? But
Crazy.
you cannot replace, and it's very interesting occasionally because another name drop, because I have actually worked with Dexter. I did his first film, the Bill film, Wild Bill. His voice is very recognisable, and I hear when they get someone a mimic to come in, where obviously his schedule hasn't allowed him to do the thing. And it's amazing how sensitive we are to be able to go, no, that's someone doing a very good mimicry, but it's not him. And there's that personal connection. Nick Boulavin, or Boulavin, I'm so sorry. I tried to pronounce your name correctly last week and got it wrong then too.
Yeah, it's Bulavin.
Bulavin.
Yeah, I'm Ukrainian, not French, so that inflection doesn't work. Yeah, I had a similar question on how to sell audio branding to somebody, but that's been answered very, very brilliantly there. And I'll remember the McDonald's example particularly, because I kind of ran into this with a video game that was like, well, we're on like a smaller budget, so we just pulled some library tracks, and then I played their demo, and I'm like, yeah, it's obvious, you can certainly tell. But coming back to audio branding, I'm wondering what sort of what sort of materials do you ask for from clients, and what sort of questions do you ask them particularly to get to the point of what they are and who they are, to sort of determine what their audio brand needs to communicate?
That's a really good question. So the process of getting to that point takes around 8 weeks. It's usually long. Often longer than the creation of the music itself. And it's really, the way we do it basically is to sit down. If they've already got a brand in place, like actually a well thought out brand with a written plan, this is the type of company we are, these are the kind of things we want to help people do, these are the people we're helping, all those things written down, then it's easier. But often they don't have that. They think they do. They usually don't. They have a logo or something. So the questions I ask are, I start with who they are as a person or a company or both, what their kind of mission is or what they're trying to achieve internally, externally, who their audience are, and then a lot of detail about who their audience is. So they should really have it written down. There should be pages of like, this person's name is X, down to like their commute is 30 minutes, so our podcast should be shorter, those sorts of things. And eventually what you end up with is the first part of what becomes an audio style guide that we give them at the end, which contains everything you need to know. So if you just come into their marketing team, you can open it up and you can understand exactly who they are, what their voice is. How you do that, it depends on the company. Sometimes it's like literally like illustrations or word clouds and things like that, all sorts of ways of kind of getting the impression over of who they are. And then from there, we mood board. I try and actually stay away from music when mood boarding. It's more visual, and mood boarding could be anything. You can, I mean, if I was doing it physically, it could be, you know, a book, a scrapbook with feathers and God knows what, and whatever they need to kind of get across who they are. But we mood board with images. We ask them questions to tease out. We do not ask them about music, but we will ask them like, what are 3 brands that you admire and why? Those sorts of questions. It's a bit like I'm blanking here, but like if you were a type of this, what type would you be? That sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And what movies do you like? What, you know, all those kind of things, to get a sense of who they are, the kind of brands they like, what podcasts do you listen to, what celebrities or influencers. I work in an entrepreneur influencer space, so there a lot of them are like, I want to sound like Apple, and I want to be like, you know, name a big celebrity. But that all goes into the mix, and then we agree. We then get to music. We listen to a couple of things. We start narrowing down and we sort of help them to actively listen and understand why it is they like that piece of music, what it is about it that they like. And then we pick a direction, basically.
Yeah.
And once we picked a direction, and all of these things are kind of signed off in steps, because otherwise you could go round and round forever. And I'm sure you're familiar with that process. So once we've picked a direction, that's the direction we're going in. And then we'll do some sketches, and then we'll pick one of those, and then we'll develop that. That's a very long-winded answer. No,
it's absolutely fantastic. And something that I mention his name a lot because I really value the conversations I've had with him, and he's hugely successful. But something Hans Zimmer said to me fairly recently was, you can't talk about music unless you've got music to talk about. And I think that's quite a nice thing to say to a client is, listen, this is just a left of this, right of this. It's never going to be a hole in one, but it's a great starting point because there's a point of reference which isn't totally abstract, because people think they can imagine music and think they can imagine sound, but very few people can.
I left out something very important.
Yeah.
Branding, the purpose of branding is to position yourself in a market, in a particular market, and position yourself away from your competitors, usually. So a lot of that is about, like, for instance, I did a lady in America who had a history show. She talked about Tudor England, basically. Americans love Tudor England, apparently. And
where they used to shit on landings, and the reason why they had so many castles is because they smelt of shit. Anyway, sorry.
I had no idea you'd studied history.
Anything I can do to help.
Where was I? You've just thrown me completely now. So she had a show about Tudor England, and her concern was, she's a very smart lady, award-winning author and all the rest of it, but an entrepreneur. And she said, I'm competing with National Geographic and all these channels. They've already got Tudor podcasts. And it was very obvious, talking to her and seeing her talk to other people, that she wasn't a dusty historian. She was like a wild rock and roll gal who used to be a rock and roll journalist. And we're like, you're not doing a history channel. You're doing an entertainment show that happens to be the top, it's like Jaws isn't really about so
a bit like CNN and Fox News.
Yes, exactly.
It's an entertainment show based around the news.
Exactly. So we positioned her away from all of those big shows. We did a piece that started with a little madrigal, lute and do 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 do, and then in come the rock drums and the big kind of dirty guitars, and it was great because it was such a statement of intent.
And therein lies the argument for commissioned, because you can jam these things together.
And she tried. Yeah. Because she was a very good businesswoman. She was very tight. She didn't want to pay for it. But I was like, this is the thing. And to go back to Jay's question, if you can sell them on the idea, if you can make them fall in love with the idea,
Yeah.
That's a great way, because she then wanted to find a piece of medieval music mashed up with rock instruments, and it wasn't out there. So,
Nick, I'll come back to you in a minute. You've raised some stuff that I want to dwell for a couple of minutes on the way in which, not just for this idea of branding and for marketing, but the way in which you can talk to your clients to really understand them better. So we'll get back to that in a minute. But Nick, you've reminded me that there is actually a fellow countryman. I think it's a countryman or a country person who is one of the runners-up, who will be winning 12 months worth of Crow Hill goodies, the next 12 months worth that we will be releasing. And I think for a lot of you who have taken part in this challenge, you'll have wished that you had the next thing that we're bringing out, because it's very, very exciting and very, very dirty. But this is Vladen Pudkov, and again, apologies for the pronunciation and also for how I am reading my terrible handwriting. So take it away, Alan, for this first of our runners-up. That was Vladen Pudkov, absolutely fantastic. I love a triplet thing. Just a little tip to try is if you reverse that triplet trick when you're doing a rhythmic pattern, if you're working triplets, and switch it to straight, it's also quite a nice way of doing that. Something that you talked about was, this idea of who they are and this idea of branding and this human connection. I think it leads very much into something that I feel very passionate about when it comes to working with new clients. I would, wherever possible, even if you're funding it, I would try and get to where they are to meet them in person. There is a lot to be said. It's slightly less boundaried, but in a way that's good. And wherever possible, I would try and take them out of the room. Maybe offer them a bit of lunch or a coffee, or even just to go on a walk and just say, listen, we don't need to talk about specifically, but it'd just be great to get to know you a bit better, this, that, and the other, which certainly if you live in this country is like, oh, I don't want to be got to be known. But I find these kind of chemistry meetings are really, really useful. And a little cheeky little trick, the ardent manipulator that I am, the little trick that I would do is I would just mentally note down any references that you hear that maybe don't connect to, and I've seen a lot of other people do this as well, that don't maybe connect to the brief. Say, for example, if someone mentions that, I went to this gig and I'm a massive fan of the hurdy-gurdy. If you slip that in and go, when we were talking, you mentioned that you liked hurdy-gurdy, so I thought that really inspired me, so I thought I'd put that one in. What it does is it gives them ownership over something that you have put in, but it means you have been fucking listening.
Yeah.
And I think that those kind of connections are very, very important. I think it's also really important to listen, not to try and oversell, and also just be really, really aware that there are some words that people, one, don't understand, and two, find really, really off-putting. So I did a really big fantasy film called The Secret of Moonacre, and I found out that the reason why it took so long for the producers to give me the commission, even though the director really wanted me to be commissioned, is I kept on using the word avant-garde. And I was talking about an avant-garde approach to the selection of instruments, not the style of music. And that they thought they were going to get screechy kind of mad, John Cage throwing fishes in pianos and stuff like that. So I just think be very, very careful of the language that you use and the references you use. It's not the time to be impressing people about Stockhausen and writers they may never have heard of and this, that, and the other. I think maybe referring to popular references like, have you seen Breaking Bad? I don't know if you saw the episode where instead of like playing with the imagery, they actually took all the sound out and it just went to a solitary piano. Those kind of relatable references are great, but saying, it just reminds me of that French film that I saw. Have you seen that? Oh, you're an idiot not for seeing it. So those are just a few little. It's a bit of a maze, and I have one thing that I always do is I always do really, really well. And the minute I feel I'm doing a sense of that I'm winning the client over, I overstep the mark and become too enthusiastic and then say something that really scares them.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, no, I've got them on board now. So basically I'm going to sample the sound of bacon being sliced. And it's like, oh, no, I really don't like the sound of that. That's terrifying. And, but I'm wacky. We've established that. So Nick, back to you. And then I wanted to welcome someone in. So what I often like to do is if there's a face that I haven't seen for a while, I'd love to introduce them. So Mandy, and you'll know why I'm very eager to meet Mandy, because we certainly haven't had a Mandy or an Amanda on before. So it would be lovely to say hello, Mandy, if you're willing. But back to you, Nick.
Yeah, I think I have already lost my train of thought a little bit, but no. My question is a little bit more business specific, since we're in the business of music. For Ben, so since you work with brands mostly, right? You then go to marketing departments and stuff like this. How do you actually go about finding clients? Would they be more receptive to working with another company or like a solo, like a name kind of thing? So meaning like, for us composers, it's often kind of preferred and not a problem to be just like Nick, the composer guy, right? But like in the corporate environment and with brands, how does that kind of unfold usually?
Wow. Yeah, that's a whole other, that's another hour and a half question and answer just for that one question. But I will try and answer. So I'll answer in two ways. Firstly, being Nick the composer, when we're talking about the area of finding brands and clients that can work with you, Nick the composer isn't enough information and it isn't specific enough. So I've dialed all the way down to like I help I help brands and leaders for brevity here, but when I'm pitching and in most of my website stuff, I help I'll use thought leaders, entrepreneurs and authors create content that connects with their audience so they hear them and remember them. So I'm not the composer guy. I'm the audio brand guy for entrepreneurs. It's very, very specific. And it's still really, really hard to find people. But at least if otherwise you're just swimming in an open blue ocean looking for the whales somewhere 100 miles away. So the smaller you can make the pond, the easier it is to hit the target. That's about branding and marketing, and that's what I had to learn: branding, marketing, and sales.
Just as an adjunct to that, I think that applies in a very general sense. Something that I'm really experiencing because I do have a presence online. We do get approached by a lot of people who would like to work with us, and they tend to dwell on who they are and what they do, not what they can bring. So that's something that, for many of you who are young and starting out and maybe you're wanting to work with other composers, I've yet to meet a successful composer who doesn't mention another composer in the story of their success. But to be able to turn to them and go, you like sound, I can make them into instruments, for example. You're immediately offering a transaction.
Yeah, and you'll note, like, there's nothing in, brand out loud design. We help thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and authors create content that connects so their audience remembers them. Music is nowhere in that. Mm-hmm. Just not even mentioned.
Yeah. Because it can be what we need is a composer. And I'm sorry to say it, but there is a preconception of someone with a large black cloak and a fucking attitude who speaks Italian. No offense to the Italians, but you know what I'm getting at, who talks in code. And I think that there is something slightly highfalutin about the word composer. That it's a little bit like, I want to do some branding. What we need is an architect. And in fact, an architect would probably be brilliant to do some branding for you. But it brings in a little bit of a kind of a hierarchical thing of that's probably going a step too far.
Yeah. I've forgotten what the question was now because there was another answer I wanted to give.
Because I'm not a very good podcaster.
Can you repeat?
Yeah, and
mark you down.
the second part of the question was about whether you position yourself as an individual or a company while pitching to these creators and podcasters and thought leaders of tomorrow.
I think that is a lot of that is about the market that you're going to actually work with and your own sort of long-term ambitions and how you want to work. I made the choice to create a company with a brand of its own because one day, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, I want to be able to sell it. And so if I make it Ben Williams, that's no good. There's no legacy there, basically. And that comes with some disadvantages. In a lot of ways, I'd be better off being Ben Williams. But that's why I did that. But in reality, I'm in a much smaller way, just like Christian. I'm the face of the company, and that's how people know me. But I didn't want to ever get into a position like my father did. He's a songwriter and producer as well. Of like they just won't work with anyone. If he brings someone else in, they don't want to someone else. They want him. And so that's why it was really important to me to actually, and it took me a year to kind of develop the processes and the documents and all of the things that behind the scenes that kind of mean I could at some point go, there you go, you can do this now. You need a composer and you need someone who understands marketing and business, and away you go. This process will work. Basically.
And I agree. I think there are advantages and disadvantages. I think that my brother, who's part of The Flight, they very much delivered on a kind of an ethos. So what you get when you work with The Flight is you get, great homemade sounds and this, that, and the other. Apologies, Joe, if I'm misselling the way that you perceive yourselves or want to be perceived. And they have a team of people they all collaborate with. I know who the key composers are. But I think there's an advantage to that because it's clear it's basically an entity that will deliver something into a project. However, I think you also need to empathise with your future self. And if you feel you're going to be going into an area of marketplace which is based on relationships, then I think it's often better to have the human element. I think what a good case study is to look at the artists who have transitioned from being an artist into being a composer, and to see if they continue referring to themselves as, say, for example, the Orb, or the gentleman who won the Oscar recently, who's from a band. And I think at some point you want to maybe elevate yourself personally. If that's something that you want to be to do, then I think it sometimes is a disadvantage to hide behind a company name. And there are, just like there are lots of names, there are lots of companies, and lots of companies with very kind of quirky names and this, that, and the other, and they kind of come and go. Whereas an association with a human being is I think that much stronger. So that's a very on the fence response from myself. But Mandy, hello, we've not seen you on the podcast before. Do you want to come in and say hi and tell us where you're speaking from? I think you've frozen, so I think your internet has gone down. It has. I'll ask you back in a minute, Mandy.
Well, I will just add on quickly then. I think the shorter answer is, if you know who your target market is, if there's a market, and that's what I did, was find a target market first. I asked myself, who needs music, who can pay for it, and who will value it? And then it becomes a lot easier to answer those questions because you have a very clear idea of who you're going to be dealing with. What would they want? What would appeal to them?
Yeah, absolutely. Charles, have you managed to get your microphone working?
Does it work?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Everyone's going.
Everyone is.
Well, the irony is that maybe an hour or so ago, I had a conversation with somebody on the other connection and it was fine. So I don't know. But let me ask this question of Ben. Actually, I think he's kind of addressed it. Christian certainly knows that I have been doing voiceover work for years and narrated a lot of audiobooks. Mm-hmm. One of the problems that the authors constantly have is their own marketing. And you mentioned authors. Have you dealt with authors who are doing or need audiobook marketing? By the way, I thought I got your link, and I'm going to send it to a few authors because they write these wonderful books and they never sell. And it's not my fault unless people do. Well, maybe people don't like my narrations, which, I can understand. I can't get my daughters to listen to me, so why would they? But anyway, but seriously, have you assisted authors in the marketing of their audiobooks or just their books in general?
No.
Okay.
No.
Simple.
Let me. So I have worked with authors, but generally, so I do the occasional audiobook in terms of editing and mixing or narration. I've done that, but most of the time, what I'm working with authors is, creating a podcast and all the other things around that to market their book. So I'm not a marketer, and that's a very specific field, marketing of books. I work with a few companies that do that, and their plan extends about 12 months prior to the book coming out, usually. And if you don't do that, you're going to really struggle. But yeah, most of what I do with authors is, most of the authors I work with are also doing speaking engagements and a podcast and maybe webinars and retreats and all sorts of other things around their business. And the book really is a glorified business card.
Wow.
Now that's a bit dismissive. Maybe there's some of them are fantastic.
Look at Spotify.
A lot of the time they're not even selling them anymore. They're saying, you can get this book for free when you join my community. I'll even post it to you and I'll send you some. So there's a whole industry out there like that. And the reason that I target authors is because I know they need to do all these other things, and they're almost all audio related. They all need audio. So, yeah.
Mandy, I see. Sorry, Charles.
I'm going to send his link to the authors.
Brilliant. Thank you, Charles. And Mandy,
appreciate it.
I can see that you're back on. love to welcome you on, because not only is it lovely to meet new people, but we just never have any ladies joining us here. So I really kind of celebrate you joining. and hopefully this will be one of many people
It's
from.
a female Christian.
Yes, oh my God. I don't know.
Yeah.
How are you, Mandy?
So cool. Thank you. I'm doing awesome. This has been so awesome and informative, and I'm just soaking it all in. So thank you so much for putting this on. It's really awesome.
Can we ask where you're speaking from?
I'm from Dallas, Texas.
Oh, very nice. Brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, Mandy, and please do come back and tell your other fellow Texans all about us. I'm aware that, Pavel, you've had your hand up for some time now. I'll come to you in a moment, but what I'd love to do is go down to a fellow, I don't know if you're from London originally, that's certainly where you're based, a gentleman called Nicholas Karillis, who is our second runner-up, who will be getting 12 months' worth of Crow Hill goodies, not least the one that's coming out in a few weeks' time, which is fucking awesome. So over to you, Alan, to play Nicholas's Storm Cello entry. Ferocious effort there from Nicholas, who I actually see is just taking a celebratory sip of tea, coffee, or possibly a large mug of champagne.
A whiskey.
Yeah, I should probably go and get a big bottle of bubbly. And just pop it.
How are you
so
doing?
much. That's amazing. I'm good. Yeah. I'm speaking from the depths of South London at the moment. But I'm originally from Mile End, East London boy.
Wow. And whereabouts in South London are you?
New Cross.
No, well, yeah.
Yeah. So I've got the studio over in Canary Wharf, so not too bad, not too far away. But yeah, thank you so much. I just love making music, and I've been lucky enough to have it as my job now for about 10 years. So all this stuff will be used on loads of different things.
That's brilliant stuff, Nicholas.
I mean, I think I used some of the Crow Hill stuff. I just got a recent placement on the Traitors, the season of the Traitors, the UK Traitors this year. So there was some Crow Hill stuff on there, which was really fun to use. But yeah, thank you so much.
Brilliant stuff, Nicholas, and do join us again, and it would be great to talk to you further about New Cross. That's where the university where Blur went, isn't it? It's down there.
Is that right? Is it? What's it called? It's it's just literally over the back there. Yeah. I can't remember what it's called.
And there was a really dodgy venue I used to play down there.
Still quite a few of those. So
yeah. It's not gone the way. It's not gone the way of Peckham. Peckham, which is where Only Fools and Horses is based. It's
full of yams.
Yeah, it's full of yams.
I used to live in Peckham.
I mean, that's not literally just down the road. But yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Brilliant stuff. Well, I think what I'm going to do, because we've got kind of 10 minutes to go before we usually wrap this up, but what I'd like to do is play the winner of this this competition. And also, I'm really excited to talk to you about the next Composer Challenge, because it totally ties in with everything that Ben and we have been talking about today, and I'm really excited to share this opportunity with you. So, without further ado, we're now going to someone who I believe is based in Hong Kong, and this is what I love about the world we live in, is this connectivity. It's just absolutely wonderful. And his name is Christopher Lai And this is the winner of the Tina Guo Storm Cello competition. He wins a session with Tina, along with the next 12 months worth of Crow Hill goodies. Take it away, Alan. Many congratulations to Christopher there. And I think, Ben, something that made that one stand out was that thing that we heard twice, which for me acted like a little mnemonic. Now, say, for example, if I was to use that music as part of the Tina Guo campaign, I'd be able to just put that dung 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 as a little thing, and that's
bookend.
Bookend, and that's the thing that's really powerful about mnemonics is it's a way of stamping something and branding something. It's an audio logo in a very, very short moment of time.
Exactly. Yeah, you can do it in a second sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the next challenge, I'm really, really excited. This podcast, we have, we've been working on this for over a year now. It started with us kind of getting pissed every month with a whole bunch of people, and that was lovely, and I really enjoyed it. I gave up booze, and but also felt that there wasn't a place where people could just come and hang. And we've slowly developed this format over the last few weeks and months. And it's something that, and this is just like, this is the way that I kind of roll as an entrepreneur, is it just feels right. I really look forward to it. I really love a lot of the advice that's been given. I love the connection that's happening. So basically, I was going to try it until Christmas last year, but as you've seen, we're now in February, March. We're really going to make a go of this podcast because I think it's something that I really believe in. We're going to get it distributed on the other kind of podcast platforms, but I think that what we need and what we lack is a bit of audio branding. So the challenge is, and the prize is, to win a paid commission to brand Fellowship of the Ring Pull. And I've got a very, very loose brief, and that is one from one composer to other composers, is I just want to hear something really, really different. If I was to be proud of one piece of audio branding, well, maybe two that I've done. One is Top Gear. And what I like about what I did in Top Gear is there's an auto wah that I used that has become very synonymous with that TV show. So for me, it is not about programming complexity. It is not about harmonic complexity. It is about just hearing something that is unusual and different. And I would say the only thing beyond that brief, I would avoid the Lord of the Rings thing. That I think is a bit of a MacGuffin, red herring. Don't go there, because I just know that I can imagine I would probably take that as a cue, and I would spend a week working on some really impressive sounding Howard Shore, and it's not going to win. So I just think something that I'm not a professional podcaster. I'm clearly not very good at it. So something that ties in with the slightly homemade nature of what we're doing, the informal nature of what we're doing. But I would say that just the one thing I'll be listening out for is a mnemonic, something that is recognizable in a second and a half. So in order to pitch, and this is an announcement today, it's not the formal launch, so we'll do that at next week's podcast. We'll go into greater detail of how to take part, what the kind of terms and conditions are, what the commission fee is going to be, and part of it will be part payment in Crowhill goodies, but there will be, I'm going to discuss with Ben what is the going rate so that we're fair commissioners, but also what we will be doing is we will be crediting your name at the end of every one of these podcasts, so that you will have a degree of recognition from that audio branding point of view. So I would say just really go for it, and as always, play to your strengths. And if there's that strange sound that you heard, there's that great thing from that show, Peep Show, where it's actually Daniel Pemberton he found this well in Spain, and he thought the reverb was amazing. He just taped it on his mini disc, and he just threw that in as part of the kind of package that he sent to the Peep Show people, and that became the audio brand. The other audio brand I was really happy with, just as an example, was I did the Ancestry adverts here, and it was so revelatory to me because it was 3 piano notes, but they were good notes, and they had a good reverb on. And I think that the temptation as composers, particularly when you're trying to impress other composers, is to err on the side of complexity. It couldn't be more from the truth. Over to Ben, if you have some recommendations as well.
I was just going to say that I think of, I will say I'm completely self-taught. I'm having a go. I'm a songwriter who figured something out. So, but I think of what you're describing as an icon. That's how I describe it in the guides, because I think that language, people understand that. Do you know what I mean? As in, an audio equivalent of a little icon that you can recognize. You know what it does. You know what it's for. And that can be within a short 15-second piece. The icon can be in there, and you can kind of pull it out.
A great example, and people from outside Europe may not be familiar with this, but a friend of mine, Andy Gray, did the package for Big Brother. And that
amazing.
It's just, but what I would say is I'd love for it to have some music in, just because I want to support that craft as well. And Andy did that wonderful combination of a really catchy tune that he's since let me know that Paul Oakenfold had nothing to do with writing. And it's not controversial, he said it on this podcast. But you could take a 16th beat from any part of that thing and know exactly what it is.
That's a really good measure. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a massive fan of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I love the story behind that. Larry David was, and what's lovely about that is you could have the whip bum. If you heard that, you knew exactly what that was. But I can also musically go bum bum bum, as a comment on someone, doing a total Larry David. I love the story behind that. He was, and again, this is me just returning back to the original kind of opening comment when I introduced you, Ben, was this idea of doing things that are possibly adjacent to your own ambitions. It was basically the theme tune to a local bank. I believe actually, Mandy, it was in Dallas, or it might be in Fort Worth, and Larry David was in his hotel room, and he heard this advertisement for this local bank, and he just got in touch with his PA, just went, I heard this bit of music. I think it may be useful in the future. He was still working on the Seinfeld show at the time. And it's just, you just never know whether it's going to be Curb Your Enthusiasm or a cat being raped by a Yorkshire Terrier. You don't know where the opportunities are going to, for anyone who's joined the podcast, and didn't hear that story, are going to be quite disturbed. You may have to rewind. I'll make sure that it's bookmarked.
On a practical level, I'll just say one quick thing, which is sometimes I find it's easier, and I don't know how everybody else works, but if you know that you're going to have to create a bunch of different assets of different lengths and styles and other things for a show, sometimes it's easier to work backwards from like 30 seconds down and down and down and down and find.
That's a really good tip.
Rather than come up with that thing from the start. it can often just emerge.
Yeah, and this is we're going to be doing and commissioning and hopefully talking you through and everyone else who's watching through the process of creating an audio package. So yes, do be mindful that part of that audio package, part of that commission will be some beds, what we call bumpers, the mnemonic, and the theme tune, and maybe a theme tune that's a little bit longer at the end. So whatever way that you work, make sure, you know, if you're going out and doing your finger clips in that local well, just get enough assets to work with. We're going to give you the finer details of this next week. I'm going to do a dedicated YouTube about it. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do that. And please join us every week on a Thursday, same time, 1900 hours, UK time, which I think will be changing soon. Or has it already changed? No, not yet. Ben, thank you so much for coming along. And I don't wish to speak for other people, but I'm sure that everyone agrees it's been a really informative time.
I would say genuinely thank you for inviting me. I had a great time. It was really nice meeting everybody and talking about this stuff. And yeah, anytime.
And we don't often play out on something, but I think that we've lost someone incredible today, and I just think it would be appropriate to play out on this. Take it away, Alan.
My life in the sunshine. Everybody loves the sunshine. Sunshine. Everybody loves the sunshine. Sunshine. Folks get down in the sunshine. Sunshine. Yeah. Folks get brown in the sunshine. Just bees and things and flowers. 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 My life, my life, my life, my life in the sunshine. Everybody loves the sunshine. Sunshine. Everybody loves the sunshine. Sunshine. Folks get down in the sunshine. Sunshine. Folks get brown in the sunshine. Feel what I feel when I feel what I feel when I'm feeling in the sunshine. Feel what I feel when I feel what I feel when I'm feeling in the sunshine. Do what I do when I do what I do when I'm doing in the sunshine. do.